Key points. Amendment overview. Pakistan's parliament has passed 23 amendments, with over half related to the judiciary, often in response to executive-judiciary power struggles. In contrast, only about 10% of India's 106 amendments address judicial issues. Judicial accountability. Pakistan's judiciary holds the unique role of holding the government accountable due to Parliament's lack of independent oversight of the executive. Governments have sought ways to reduce judicial power to prevent scrutiny. Judiciary's role. Judicial decisions have led to high-profile cases, including the dismissal of Prime Ministers Yusuf Raza Gilani and Nawaz Sharif. The judiciary has been criticized for certain controversial decisions, indicating a blurred separation of powers. Key aspects of the 26th Amendment. Changes the process for appointing the Chief Justice of Pakistan, now requiring a 12-member parliamentary committee instead of seniority. Sets the Chief Justice's retirement at 65 years or a 3-year term, whichever is earlier. Introduces constitutional benches and a reconstituted judicial commission with enhanced legislative influence. Executive judiciary dynamics. The amendment package appears to counter perceived encroachments by the judiciary, aimed at maintaining government stability post-October 25, 2024, retirement of Chief Justice Qazi Fayez Issa. This amendment package raises concerns about the potential politicization of judiciary functions. Future implications. Increased legislative and executive control could threaten judicial independence. Observers question if the new powers will be used judiciously or serve political agendas. Crux. Successive Pakistani governments have heavily focused on constitutional amendments impacting the judiciary, reflecting an ongoing struggle between the executive and judicial branches. In contrast to India's approach, where judicial amendments are limited, Pakistan's amendments often aim to reduce the judiciary's independence to prevent it from holding the executive accountable. The recent 26th Amendment, passed in record time, increases legislative and executive influence over judicial appointments and functions, raising concerns about its implications for judicial independence and checks and balances. Key points. Israel's attack on Iran. Israel launched limited airstrikes on Iranian missile sites, following escalating tensions from attacks on Iranian officials and Hamas leadership. The U.S. is credited by media for moderating Israel's strike scope to avoid nuclear sites. Iran's potential retaliation. Iranian officials warned of retaliation, which could extend to U.S. allies in the region. Iran's recent missile attacks aim to expose weaknesses in Israel's Iron Dome defenses. U.S. involvement. U.S. bolstered its military presence, deploying anti-missile systems and F-16s specialized in electronic warfare. Speculation exists about potential indirect U.S. support in neutralizing Iranian defenses during Israel's strike. Gaza crisis and international response. The ongoing crisis in Gaza, marked by severe humanitarian suffering, continues with minimal international intervention. Western and Gulf powers' limited influence on Israel in Gaza contrasts with their push to restrain Israeli attacks on Iran. Global implications. Escalation could lead to broader conflict, impacting global oil infrastructure and destabilizing the world economy. The article critiques global powers for overlooking the Palestinian plight, suggesting they may act only when their own interests are threatened. Crux. The article examines recent Israeli airstrikes on Iran amid heightened Middle East tensions. Although the scope was reportedly limited, Iran has promised retaliation, potentially impacting American and Gulf allies. Escalating tensions also underscore U.S. involvement in the region, as it bolsters its defenses in Israel. The article criticizes international powers for failing to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and warns that unchecked violence could lead to a global economic impact if the conflict broadens. Key points. CBS interview and controversy. In an interview promoting the message, Dokupul questioned Coates on Israel's right to exist, implying that Coates' book might resonate with extremist views. Coates responded that he opposes any ethnocratic state, stating his intention to amplify Palestinian voices typically excluded from mainstream media. Media and narrative control. Coates argues that U.S. media largely presents Israel's perspective, often marginalizing pro-Palestinian viewpoints. The controversy reflects a broader pattern in Western media where critiques of Israel are met with accusations of anti-Semitism or extremism. Corporate influence and internal CBS response. CBS executives, including Sherry Redstone, a pro-Israel figure, criticized CBS's response to Dokupal's questioning. CBS initiated an internal review, citing breaches of editorial standards, though Redstone defended Dokupal's tough questioning. Palestinian narrative suppression. Coates highlighted that U.S. media seldom covers Palestinian perspectives or Israel's apartheid-like policies towards Palestinians. The Committee to Protect Journalists reports that more journalists have died covering Gaza than other recent conflicts, underscoring the risks Palestinian journalists face. Coates' stance and resilience. Coates asserts that the conditions he witnessed in Palestine mirror apartheid, simplifying the issue as one of right versus wrong. Despite pressures, Coates remains firm in his stance, advocating for more Palestinian representation in newsrooms and resisting efforts to discredit his voice on the issue. The article discusses the backlash Ta-Nehisi Coates faced after a CBS interview, where he spoke critically about Israel's treatment of Palestinians in his book, The Message. During the interview, CBS anchor Tony Dokupal questioned Coates' perspective on Israel's right to exist, shifting the focus from the book's critique of Israeli policies towards Palestinians. This controversy reflects broader issues within Western media, where pro-Palestinian narratives are often marginalized. Coates emphasized that human rights violations he witnessed in Palestine echo apartheid-like conditions, a position he maintained despite attempts to silence or discredit his views. Key points. Impact of extreme weather. Rising extreme weather events like floods and heat waves lead to significant human, economic, and environmental losses. Climate events reverse gains in poverty reduction and economic development by consuming scarce resources. Necessity for climate resilience in Pakistan. Pakistan must invest in resilience as adaptation can protect vulnerable communities, reduce poverty, and support local economies. Adaptation measures, like protecting jobs and household incomes, help prevent disruptions in economic activities. Evidence of high returns on climate adaptation. A World Resources Institute study highlights that every dollar in climate adaptation can return between $2 to $10. The 2024 Climate Resiliency Report shows that for each $1 in resilience investment, $13 is saved through avoided damages and economic stability. Global examples of successful climate interventions. Countries like Kenya, Vietnam, Mozambique, and India show the effectiveness of resilience investments in areas such as water security, housing, flood risk management, and heat mitigation. Strategies include data usage, participatory approaches, private sector involvement, and strong policy support. Challenges to effective implementation. Pakistan faces obstacles like limited climate knowledge, data availability, and institutional capacity. Successful integration of climate resilience requires overcoming these barriers, along with strong political and policy backing. Long-term benefits beyond extreme events. Investments in agriculture and infrastructure improve food security, health services, employment, and social equity. Aligning climate resilience with development goals can foster economic opportunities and uplift marginalized communities in Pakistan. Policy integration for sustainable growth. For Pakistan, aligning climate adaptation with development policies could enhance resilience and human capital, essential for a sustainable future. Crux. Extreme weather events increasingly disrupt livelihoods, lives, and economies, pushing resource-scarce nations like Pakistan to prioritize climate resilience. Investment in climate adaptation, such as infrastructure and early warning systems, can save billions by preventing losses and strengthening economic systems. Evidence shows that every dollar spent on resilience yields high returns, helping safeguard vulnerable communities and maintaining economic stability. Pakistan must focus on integrating climate adaptation within its development policies to improve resilience, economic stability, and human capital. Key points. Israel-Iran tensions escalate. Israel targeted Iranian military installations in Tehran and western provinces, killing 4 Iranian soldiers. The attacks mark a rare, publicized acknowledgement by Israel, justified as retaliation for Iran's October 2nd missile strikes. Background of conflict. Iran's missile barrage was a reaction to Israel's actions, including the killing of Iranian allies and the invasion of Lebanon. Israeli aggression including attacks on Iranian generals and facilities in Syria, has fueled ongoing tension. International reactions: the US and UK called for Iranian restraint while expressing support for Israel's security. Regional players, including Iran's Arab neighbors and Pakistan, condemned Israel's actions, with Pakistan attributing responsibility to Israel for the escalation. Geopolitical tensions and right to defense: Iran insists it will defend itself and support allies in the axis of resistance against Israeli actions. The U.S. stance on Israel's right to self-defense contrasts with Iran's view that it, too, has the right to defend against Israeli attacks. Call for de-escalation. For genuine de-escalation, global actors must advocate for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an end to Israeli hostilities in Lebanon. Without intervention, there is a high risk of further destabilization in the region. Crux: recent escalations in Israel-Iran tensions reflect a long-standing shadow war, coming to the forefront due to intensified conflicts since October 7th. Israel's recent attacks on Iranian targets were in response to Iranian missile strikes, which Iran justified as retaliation for Israel's ongoing aggression in Lebanon and Syria. Western countries, particularly the US and UK, continue to back Israel, urging restraint on Iran while supporting Israel's right to self-defense. Calls for de-escalation, including from Pakistan and Iran's neighbors, stress the need for a ceasefire in Gaza and an end to Israeli hostilities to prevent regional destabilization. Key points: Noman and Sajid's bowling success. Noman Ali and Sajid Khan took 39 of 40 wickets in the last two tests, turning the series after Pakistan's initial defeat. Their performance, particularly on turning pitches, was critical to Pakistan's success. Captain Shan Masood's leadership. After 6 consecutive losses, Shan led Pakistan to a series win, ending England's second innings with a 6. This win marks Pakistan's first home Test series win in over 3 years. Strategic shift in selection and pitches. The selection committee's revamped approach included playing to Pakistan's strengths with spin-friendly pitches, notably in Multan and Rawalpindi. These pitch changes were a stark contrast to the dead pitches reportedly preferred by previous captain Babar Azam under former PCB chairman Ramiz Raja. Management and Selection Committee impact. The selection committee's increased influence allowed Pakistan to play more strategically, shifting control from the coach and captain to better team choices. The current management, led by PCB chairman Mohsin Naqvi, aims for performance improvement, overcoming earlier setbacks like a home series defeat to Bangladesh. Return to winning form. Through strategic pitch and selection decisions, Pakistan reasserted its competitive edge in home Test series, focusing on spinning conditions that favored their bowlers. Crux: in a remarkable comeback, Pakistan's spin duo, Noman Ali and Sajid Khan, dominated the last 2 tests against England, securing Pakistan's first home Test series win in over 3 years. Led by captain Shan Masood, Pakistan overcame past selection and pitch strategy issues, benefiting from a revamped selection committee and a home pitch that maximized their spin strengths. This strategic shift highlights the significance of playing to home advantages and making decisive team management choices. Key points: socioeconomic exploitation and profits. Criminal activities, particularly human trafficking, are fueled by exploiting economically disadvantaged groups for large profits. Pakistan is ranked on Tier 2 in the U.S. Trafficking in Persons Report 2024, indicating significant trafficking challenges. Advocacy for awareness and legal knowledge. KP Governor Kundi emphasizes the importance of awareness and education in combating human trafficking and migrant smuggling. Focus areas include protecting victims' identities, assessing law enforcement's effect, and connecting victims to legal resources. Challenges in law enforcement. Despite the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2018 and other legislation, enforcement remains weak. Official collusion, inadequate police force professionalism, and patronage hinder victim protection and accountability. International protocols and gaps. Pakistan ratified the UN Protocol on Trafficking in Persons in 2022, but is not a signatory to the broader UN-TOC trafficking protocol. Effective anti-trafficking measures require adherence to international standards and practices. Need for systemic reforms. Pakistan needs comprehensive reforms to dismantle the culture of impunity and implement laws effectively. ensuring safety for marginalized communities and fostering socioeconomic progress are crucial to curbing the nation's trafficking issues. Crux. Human trafficking and migrant smuggling in Pakistan are largely driven by socioeconomic factors, especially the exploitation of the poor for profit. Despite existing laws and some international agreements, weak enforcement and governmental shortcomings allow these practices to persist. Stronger legal frameworks, improved law enforcement, and better public awareness, as urged by KP Governor Faisal Karim Kundi, are essential to protect victims and curb these transnational crimes.